And lights. More lights, and we'll check the mic. Make sure the sound is working. Hello, hello. Sounds good. Whew. Welcome back to the stream, everyone. I've been working on recovering from my con crud from last week. Definitely feeling a little better. Still a little bit on the road to recovery, so if my voice sounds a little gravelly, then that's just our new life now. The low deep. Of course, I have my coffee here now, so I'm sure it's gonna help with the voice. Hello. Alright, hope everyone's having a good week so far. It is Tuesday. We are here with our blank piece of paper, our fancy pen, and zero idea of where this game is going to start or where it's going to end up. So last week was a weird one. Last week we had some fun talking about the game I'm working on, What to Eat After the Apocalypse. We dabbled a little bit into thoughts of survival, survivalist literature, a lot of the books and tropes where people are fighting against nature, fighting against the elements to survive. Pop over to our notes. What did we even... I was so out of it with my cold. Oh, mushroom eating push your luck game. Because we're talking about eating too much cheese. Oh yeah, we were talking about the different things that you could consume and how those could be good or bad for you. So I had some fun talks. Senior Bob, time to become a singer-songwriter? I know. J92R, hello. Thank you very much. I'm getting there slowly. I've been able to rest up a little bit, so I'm taking my time. Recovery. Gotta sing all those like slow jazzy songs with my gravel voice, or I could just be Batman. That's an option too. Also, Senior Bob, thank you for the recommendation of the book. We were just talking about what we talked about last stream, and Senior Bob brought up this cool book that was at first looked like it was something from the Civil War, but turns out that it was a 1950s grizzly bear attack. This one man against the wilderness, dragging himself back to safety. Not sure what it is that's so compelling about these stories for me. I think a lot of it is just the monumental challenge, right? You hear these like 1 in a million stories of someone just making it, surviving through this thing, and it's just an amazing story where a lot of people would have died, right? And this person lived, and it seems like it means something, right? That they were able to make it through, overcome that challenge. And something that might end up being our keyword that we start our mind map for today, for today's brainstorm, it's been making me think about focus, right? And I think one of the interesting thing about these books and these stories that talk about survival is you become very dedicated and focused to a particular thing. Instead of in our daily lives, in normal life, right, you're bouncing around, it's like I gotta do my laundry, gotta do the dishes, gotta go meet friends, gotta do this task, this job, so on and so forth. But when you're in a survival situation, it comes down to, it's like, I need food, I need to find a road. Like you get tunnel vision, right, for this singular point of focus. And I think that's very interesting narratively and philosophically to think about. So check on Twitter real quick, see if anyone there has anything to say, but if no one has another direction they want us to go, or a challenge. I do design challenges as well. That's always really fun. But usually without any other sort of impetus, I just pick a word at random, start doing a brainstorm in the form of a mind map, and go from there and see what evolves. Also talking about, if you've been on Twitter recently, I've talked in the past about the game I'm working on, Have You Had Enough Cheese? Over the past couple of weeks, thinking about it, solidifying it, printed out the pieces, not exactly sure where it's going to go. But I think for Gen Con, I'm actually going to try and turn it into a mega game, metagame / pervasive game. So just take a bunch of bits to Gen Con, release them into the wild, and see what happens with this concept of having enough cheese. So yeah, that's been fun. If you're interested to see more about that, you can pop onto Twitter and see what's up. For now, we're going to make a new game, and we're going to start with this idea of focus. So I think in a lot of modern board games, you tend to have not necessarily a core concept that you're working from. A lot of designers I talk to and a lot of prototypes I see, it's like you have to start with several systems at a time in order to make something interesting. I feel like a lot of people nowadays are very tied up in, is this going to be interesting enough, as opposed to, do I have a core activity or action that's fun? People want to build out this world. For example, a game that I saw recently had timers, had buildings, had different currencies, and you were stacking up pieces, putting down marbles to be resources. It looked pretty cool and pretty interesting, and I think there's a lot of space there to explore. Excuse me. But I'm interested right now in the moment about focus. What if we pulled back and looked at some sort of singular action, something you could do over and over again and have it still be fun? I think this is a very difficult design challenge. You see it a lot in party games, tend to balance out the simplicity of the actions of their games with the entertainment of the group. So having enough people in a place together, designers hope for their very simple actions, that the interactions between the people will provide the grit and the differential from play to play. For just one, for example, you're revealing a card to the rest of the group, they're writing down a word and revealing it. So it's very much not a single action, but a very short gameplay loop, we'll say. So it's like, look at card, think of word, write it down, share with group, erase if necessary, show to the guesser guesses. And that's the whole loop of this game. Party game, I'm going to write down just one as an example here. Just one. Jenga. I think a lot of dexterity games. So we have party games here and dexterity games as well. And I'm thinking in the game sphere right now for this brainstorm. Again, with the mind mapping, the idea is to start from the known and start from the ideas that you most naturally gravitate towards and quickly move to the branches that tend to be wilder and more creative ideas. So yeah, the concept is focus. So it's not just games that are focused. As we work on our mind mapping, we can think of other ways in which focus, the word focus, the concept focus makes us think. I'm going to put down survival because that's part of where this came from. Survival, food, shelter. Yeah, food, water, shelter. Popping back to Jenga and dexterity games. Jenga, for the core gameplay loop, presuming that the game has already been set up, feel, and depending on the house rules you're using, kind of feel around for a block that's loose, gently remove the block, place it on top, and then the next person goes. So that, even more so than the just one gameplay loop, is very simple, very focused. I'm going to write gameplay loops down here. Move that up a little bit. Looks like it's going to cut off a little bit. And Jenga is a fun game. I'm trying to remember the last time that I played Jenga. I think it's been a while. There's something about that dexterity, or the making the footballs, flicking it through the goal, flipping a coin, heads or tails. There's something very visceral about the physicality of a lot of these dexterity games that has a Moorish, or Crokinole is another great one that I played recently. All about flicking and knocking pieces out. So the gameplay loop for that, I'm going to start writing down these gameplay loops. Not sure if that will be relevant to the game we end up designing today, but loops and focus. Short gameplay loops. I'm just going to put down just one. I'm going to write down some of these games as references. Jenga, Crokinole. So for Crokinole, I've played the 4-player version. You might be able to play with 2 players as well, but it's 2v2. You're on teams. You're flicking your piece, trying to get it in the circles, and you have to hit, I think, one of the other team's pieces. And whoever has the most pieces in the circles closest to the center at the end of the game wins. So it's flick a piece, right? Line up your shot, aim, give impetus to your piece, send it into the center. Your piece either stays if it was a legal move or is removed from the board, and go on to the next player. Again, very simple, very tight loops, and it's the same loops too. I think for a lot of more complex games, even if they do have short gameplay loops, and for those of you who may not understand what gameplay loops are, I realize I'm using this terminology in a blasé fashion. That's just what an action or what a turn looks like. It's a pretty general term. So anything where it's repetitive and a player will do a certain number of actions is generally a gameplay loop. There can be loops within loops. A lot of more complex games have all sorts of loops just spiraling and feeding back upon each other. And as with code, which I think is probably where this term came from, there can be ways to get out of the loops. Like, you don't always do the exact same things. But for a simple game like these ones that we're looking at right now, it is usually not loops within loops. It is like a core loop and then it resets, core loop and it resets, and you just do that a number of times until the game is over. Welcome, game biologists. Makes me think of sleepover type games kids can play with no components. Ooh, I like that. I played Never Have I Ever when I was on vacation last week. One atomic statement per turn, but everyone stays engaged through turns. You are brave. I don't think I've played Never Have I Ever since, like, college. I think, yeah, quick sidebar to Never Have I Ever. I think when you're with the same core group of friends and you kind of, like, know what's going on with people, then it can be, like, kind of funny, and you're like, oh, I know this person's kind of wild, or I know this person's kind of quiet, and you can see, have your thoughts confirmed or denied. But I feel as an adult, especially with the groups of people I hang out with, I don't know people as well. I feel like I'm like, what questions would I ask? Unless it was like board game, never have I ever. It's like, never have I ever played 10 board games in a night, or whatever. Yeah, that's very brave. Senior Bob. But I also like that the kids' games with no components. And if we're talking about focus as a place to start from, no components is a really cool constraint because it's an oral game, right? Usually you might have like a written down thing, but you don't have a lot of things, foci, right? Like things to focus on. And so you don't have pieces or cards to lead you through the actions of the game. So a lot of it's mental, and it necessarily simplifies the actions that you can do. Storytelling games, and some might use like a blank piece of paper or something to track if it's a little more gamified. Never have I ever, line at a time, story, or line at a time drawing is really cool. If you do like a line for you write like 2 lines for a story, you like add one on and like cover up the one behind it. You can come up with some really fun stuff like that. Oh, Game Mile just says, play with kids, it stays clean. It helps if you can say things like, never ever spoken Vietnamese to my mom. Got all 3 of the kids with that one. Aww. Oh, the shame there. Yeah, my mom is Norwegian, and I stopped speaking Norwegian when I was 6, and it was very sad. I like that, though. The secret is play it with kids, and then you don't have those awkward times. Unless, of course, you're a parent, and you're like, never have I ever not cleaned my room for a month, apparently. Go clean your room. All right. Okay, so we're already starting to come up with some fun thoughts and ideas here. Short gameplay loops. No components game. Anything you can do to keep things tight or keep things focused. No component games, and then like a single component game, and again with a focus. So the fewer components that a game has, the more likely it is to be simpler and more focused, even if they are multi-use components, because think of a game like Magic. There are, it was like 15,000, 20,000 potential components for that, and each component is very complex, too. So if we're looking at single or few component games, and then low complexity components. Again, with Jenga, it does have 50 or 60 or how many pieces are in there, but all the pieces are the same, and all the pieces are just a block. Or with the game The Climbers, where you're stacking the blocks, there's a few different size blocks, and you have your ladder and your climber, so it does have more components, but again, there's the colors on the sides of them. It's been a little while since I played that game, but there's, you know, no text, no cards. Put that, no cards. I like that as a design direction as well. I'm gonna put this no components / few components. Just put low complexity for now. Brandstanding, hello. Team building or no low problem solving games can create some good type loops. Oh man, that makes me think of the engineering. Engineering. I'm an engineer. I can spell engineering. Engineering challenge games we used to do, like build a bridge out of toothpicks. And then you have challenges like trying to think now about more I haven't done a ton of team building activity. All I'm thinking is like the whatchamacallit, the trust fall is, I feel like, is the one that you see on TV and movies a lot of times. It's not really a game. And it usually ends badly in those, so that's how they use it as an example. But yeah, team building things, and again with the group, if you're doing it, challenging games or team building. If you're doing it with your team of people, you're gonna have a very mixed group of experiences with challenges or with doing games, right? With playing games. And so by necessity, because you're in this big group of people, sometimes it's 6 people in a group, sometimes it's as much as 20. Put that down to more people, less complexity. A very focused game is also good for bigger groups, right? Because you have to explain it to all the people. They all have to understand. The easier it is to understand, the more likely they can just dive in and play the game, because they don't have to be asking around. Everyone's doing different things. And in a group, you don't know the level experience people have just with the languages of games. So keeping the simplicity up and keeping the complexity down can make this activity very accessible for large groups. For large groups. Low component, single move game. Are You There, Moriarty? Combo of Blind Man's Bluff, Marco Polo, and fencing. Wonderful Glory. Hello. Welcome to the chat. I have not played that before, but this is a good example. This actually feeds into this mega game / meta game that I'm working on. But the outdoor games, I love this space. Oh man, like tag, like that kind of thing. What is the definition for that category? I was even just looking up today, and it's difficult to really put a finger on it, because it's not exactly a sport. Outdoor games, but you might not play it outdoors. Let me see, I actually have my list of terms up here that I can post. Pervasive playground games, outdoor games, playground games. But again, these terms are very, I think it's really cool space to explore, because I think as kids doing these playground games, this Are You There, Moriarty, Blind Man's Bluff, imagine one person's walking around saying, Are you there, Moriarty? And there's some call and response actions to it. So let's just break this down into what the gameplay loop. Movement in space. I'll say body movement in physical space, because it's a very hallmark of an outdoor game or a playground game. Call and response. The fencing. I imagine there's pool noodles or something, so dexterity element to it. I have not played this game myself, so I'd have to look up a little more to see that. Oh, is this blind man's bluff, so it might not be movement. It sounds like maybe it's a circle up game where you're just like jabbing at someone with a stick or something. Ouija boards apparently need some focus. Apparently, that's another thing too, where and then we died, people have said that it's similar to Ouija boards. I'm like, oh yeah, it is similar to Ouija boards, but I've never actually played with a Ouija board before. But I like this concept of piece movement or action, like non-freeform movement, non-grid based movement. Like, not to the point of an abstract game where you're trying to, like, really think, but you're just moving yourself or your pieces around in a space. So I think there's two ways that you can go here. Like, we have party game, dexterity game. You can also have, I mean, I would say something like checkers is very focused. You know, we're talking about gameplay loops. It's like, pick any one of these pieces, move it into the one of the legal spaces, jump your own pieces if possible, jump your opponent's pieces if possible, and there's a king roll to it. Like, there's a very tight gameplay loop similar to some of these party games and dexterity games. I think what I'm looking for in games right now that I'm designing is like, I want to have that simplicity but not constraint. Simplicity without too much constraint, or this idea of free form. So you are making choices, there are rules, but you can make a couple of different choices, and it's not like an abstract strategy where you're instantly punished for making a bad move. So there's like a lot of moves that you can do, and based on a rapidly changing environment, that's what creates the tension. Changing environment creates and interaction with other players creates the tension. So it's like an out here tension as opposed to a cognitive tension. What's the best way to put that? I'm making stuff up as I go along. I love the idea. I've been reading Rules of Play slowly but surely. Being on the Ludology podcast, listening to the Ludology podcast, you do start to get a lot of the language. I'm very excited to read Jeff and Isaac's book coming up. I think there's probably a lot of great language in there as well, but the space is still open enough that you can make up language. Real space tension. Real time. Meat space. I like meat space too. Meta space. Meat space tension as opposed to cognitive tension. Senior Bob, the takeaway from that joke is designing something that keep people compelled to keep looking at the board. Yeah, I know it was a joke. It was a good joke. I could see the joke in there. But I think Senior Bob, you have a really good point here. Is this compunction, compelling, or compunction? What is exciting about this? And in a game, in a playground game, like Blind Man's Bluff or Marco Polo, you know, the tension is the moving of the pieces. Because everything's moving all the time, you have to pay very close attention to it. And I think for a very focused thing like this to be compelling, you do have to be compelled. Like, you do need it to a very tight magic circle, or you need to be wrapped up in it. This is not the sort of thing where you can kind of like sit back and survey your realm, right? And think about it. It's like you have to be heads down focused, usually a shorter, more intense experience. Heads down, focused, shorter, more intense experience. Oh, game biologist talking about this, Are You There, Moriarty game, which is cool. I want to play more like playground style games. I used to love those. I used to like actually really like tag with hide and seek variants to it. I used to make up playground games, and even not even as a young child, like as a growing child, and even more recently with something like playing Ultimate Frisbee or whatever. Just that like physical, visceral. And I realize I haven't done stuff like that in a while, so I'd love to get back to that ludic experience. Basically, two people blindfolded, holding opposite ends of a dish towel, each arm to the rolled up newspaper. One said, "Are you there, Moriarty?" The other answers yes, and the asker tries to hit the answer with the rolled up newspaper. It sounds fun. I should play that with Phil. I don't know if you're watching this, Phil, but we're gonna hit each other with newspapers. I don't know. Okay, my problem is I don't know where I would get a newspaper. I have I have the big roll of white butcher paper for designing stuff, and I could probably make that work. But newspapers, like, where would I even get a newspaper? Where do people get newspapers nowadays? Grandstanding. There are a few tag variants that model interesting items around that. Everyone is it and slow tag all use simultaneous movement to create interesting tactical choices. See this? Alright. Outdoor playground games. We're gonna space up here. Gonna make a line. Slow tag. I'm gonna circle this because I think the more we talk about this, I've probably played slow tag at some point, but my idea of you're just like everyone just has to go really slow. There's probably more rules to it as well, but that's my idea of what I'm feeling out here with a very focused, simple gameplay. Maybe simultaneous, maybe real time, simultaneous, or slow tag, everyone is it. Everyone, I don't even know how that would work. That sounds fascinating. I want to look up a video of that. Yeah. Simultaneous, real time, slow time. So Phil and I have been talking a lot about this idea more for digital games than physical games, because I don't know exactly how the concept would work for physical games, but the idea is this slow time strategy. I think it harkens back a little bit to what people are trying to get at with the timers in games like Kitchen Rush, timers as workers. So you're placing a timer, flipping it, and it takes that much time to be able to do the thing. So there is like, it's in real time, but your typical real time, it gets to be a little weird in tabletop. I'm actually pitching my friend's real-time game, Chris. I don't know if you're in the chat today. Heroes Beware is a real-time dungeon construction game. But for the most part, I feel hectic real-time works best, like a party game, Happy Salmon, Slappy sort of a thing. But this idea of slow time, not necessarily with the timers, because I think that gets a little fidgety, but having to move, constant movement, but at a slow pace. I think there's just some very fun, juicy, interaction there. And it's a little more accessible too, right? So you're talking about slow tag with variable speeds. Like tag, if you're the fastest, you're just better at it, right? If you're playing with people with varying abilities, it can be a more accessible experience. but at a slow pace. Game Biologist says, I love playing Crows and Cranes at Vacation Bible School as a kid. It's a team game where you may end up changing teams on each turn. You still end up rooting for your team, even though that's a fluid concept at any time. Oh my gosh. I wonder if there's a book of playground games. This is totally off the rails of what we're talking about now. Right now, is there a book of playground games? I should talk to James Wallace about that, because he's working on the history of games, and I wonder how much he looked into outdoor games, playground games, because I would love just a categorization of that. And I like to think that we played them all as a kid, right? But like Game Biologist, you're just bringing up all these that I've never played before, and I'd love to see categorize the ones I've played, regional differences. Okay, chat, we're writing a book now, right? We're gonna do a poll of all the different games that might have the same names but be played differently. I used to love the one that was like wolves and sheep, or like bear and minnows or something. Same game, different names, where you like charge down the field and the tagger collects people. And beginning of the game, one tagger, many runners. End of the game, you're trying to catch those last couple of runners. It's very like one versus many, or many versus many experience. And again, playground games really fits into this tight focus gameplay loop we're talking about. The tension is in the game, not the player. Perfect feels. And the nice thing about having this sort of a tight experience is I feel like you can do it, be in it, and then get out of it. Do it, be in it, and then easily disengage, I'll say. Because I think with a lot of the games I've been playing are like very high cognitive load and very complex. Like I've been playing a lot of Magic lately, and what happens with games like that is you just get so into it, you talk to people about it, you research it, you play it, you're thinking about the stuff you're doing as you're doing it and after it. It's very engaged. What's the term for that? It's very entwined. It becomes very entwined when it's a very mental thing. Whereas more of these game as the fun. Usually you're not going to sit around after a game of tag and be like, oh man, if I only dodged left instead of dodging right, I would have missed that. It's a very like lighter ludic experience. Tactical, not strategic, yeah. Tactical, strategic. I'm a good speller, I swear. I don't know why I have so much time talking and typing at the same time. Game Biologist says, I bought a bunch of giant foam fingers at Party City, like the #1, oh my gosh, and a rope dog toy for a more durable Moriarty component set. It's one of those weird 19th century parlor games. I really want to learn more about those games lost to history. Let me look up real quick. History of Games book as I mean, I can just find it in James's tweets, because it's like, how much does he tweet? I remember he made a picture, one of these books that he consulted on, because I also am very excited in this concept of history. I don't know if there's a book like that. If there is a book, I want to read it. And if there's not a book, I want to write it, because I think this is something specifically about the history of parlor games. And that's, parlor game actually is another great, I'm going to make a sidebar here. Parlor I think that's a pretty good, it's a good term, but it's difficult because we don't have parlors anymore. So it's kind of like, what would this game, what would this game be called if it was played in the 1800s? And a lot of the games evolved from those, right? It's like, well, parlor, what even is a parlor? It's like, I don't know anyone who has a parlor. All right, I'm gonna have to look up this book later unless someone wants to look up. I think James is one of the co-authors. I don't know if his name was on the title of it, but I know he posted it a few weeks ago. It's not released yet. It's just been announced, but I'm very excited to check this out. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. Brand standing is a 2-minute max game of tag. Senior Bob, a bit off topic. Not a problem. We love going off topic here. There's that video game where time only progresses when you move. Super Hot, I believe. Other beings are trying to shoot you, and you're trying to shoot them. Yeah, I think that was called Super Hot. Rover Red Rover? Oh my gosh, yeah. Alright, there could be a book, but we can start writing out all these. This is going to be our book, chat. So this is where it starts. Rover Red Rover. History, sociology, and geography of parlor, playground, outdoor games. Totally focused, totally niche. I love it. And mostly based on interviews from people on Twitter and during my Twitch streams. Sheep and Wolf, tag, red light, green light, right? Oh my gosh, red light, green light. I'm having the nostalgic feels right now. And this, like, we can design anything here, chat. We can design a playground game, parlor game. Be interested to take some of that and see if you could do like a red light, green light, but in more physical tabletop form. Red light. And I think there's a hunger for these types of parlor games made tabletop. Parlor dexterity, like there's coming into the hobby market, I would say. If you go to mass, if you go to a Target or a Walmart, you're gonna see a lot of these games. But I think for a lot of the heavier hobby gamers, there's companies and publishers in that space making these more, probably more thoughtful dexterity / parlor games. And it's cool to see it in this space where it's like hobby gamers and complex games, and they start to take gateway games to get their friends into it. And, you know, now they're having parties with a lot of mixed gamers, non-gamers, and they're looking for faster, fun variations on this like lighter party style game. Yep, just found it. Nice. Grandstanding, nostalgia is one of the great assets of these types of games, right? You gotta look back in time, remember the experiences you had playing them. It's really weird, right? Like I have very visceral memories of playing these sorts of games. You know, I have a fair amount of memories from childhood, but if I think red light, green light, I remember 5th grade, 6th grade playing this game. The Sharks and Minnows game or the Sheep and Wolves game, running back and forth. I remember 1st grade, playing this in 1st grade. Like I have very strong, and I think because is that the visceral nature of it, right? The running, the excitement, the tension, like you do well or you do poorly, like there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in these games. The email just says, speaking of VBS, we came up with a game of our own waiting for folks to pick us up one day. It involved Peter Cottontail hopping down the bunny trail and getting ambushed by hunters. We were a bloodthirsty group after we finished hearing happy Bible stories. Yeah, you gotta get out that energy, right? You sit down, you're like talking, you're just like sitting, listening, being very patient. All this pent up energy you gotta get out. Brandon Standing, a great verse of this concept is Stratego Tag, which takes the core mechanic of Stratego and uses a deck of cards to make it a tag game? Ooh. You'll have to tell me more about that, or I'll have to look that up. I haven't actually played Stratego. I know it's one of the classics. But yeah, it's just one of those that I haven't come up against. I know you're moving your troops. I've seen the pieces for it. So you have like the red and the blue, and you're moving the troops around, but you can't see what the character is. So it's a little bit of a bluffing game to it. Simon says, not the electronic game. I like that you have to clarify that. You know, once upon a time, it's just like, oh, it's the game you play. It's Simon Says. And now it's like, no, not the digital one. Not the one with all the buttons and flashy lights. Alright, so we've got a lot of theory crafting here. I think we have a feel for the type of game that we're trying to create here. I'm just going to start drawing stuff because I'm not sure exactly where I want to go. And I just settled on red light, green light because it sounds cool to me. I don't know how, I'm remembering red light, green light with lanes for some reason. Like you have different players in a different lane and you would give them different signals. But I think that it was probably more like you have the person and the field. Each character having their own lane because they're progressing forward down the lane. Wow, I'm actually just drawing this out. I'm starting to come up with some cool concepts. So red light, green light. In case you haven't played red light, green light, so you've probably heard of it. One player plays as the speaker. You're standing there. I think, man, it's been so long too. You're with your back towards them, and then you spin around and say red light or green light. And if you say red light and people move, they have to go back to the beginning. Oh, shoot. And then if you say green light, they are allowed to move. How is this green light game? How am I not remembering the rules of this? Oh, when you say, maybe you're not turning around. On this one, you say green light, everyone move toward the finish line. You say red light, everyone must stop. If the players are still moving when you call red light, go back to the starting line. No running is allowed. So this is kind of that slow time. Green light, yellow light. Because I seem to remember this spinning around variation where you would like spin and try and catch someone. But that I might be conflating two different games here. Alright. So now we're on the red light, green light plan. You say red light when you spin around. So you say your back is facing, you say green light, and then red light and spin around. That sounds correct. Okay. So thinking about this as a tabletop implementation, having different people have pieces on their board and being able to wager an amount of movement Hidden wagers. And maybe even with a slow time thing, the speaker would not be aware of these different wagers. You could be like stacking up and stacking down the pieces. And there could also be the speaker having a hidden choice of red or green. Hidden red or green, and maybe they could watch the wagers. So some combination of red light, green light. Some combination of hidden wagers, hidden speaker choice, and movement down a number of tracks. And you can potentially like lock in the bets. Movement down a number of tracks. You're wagering in real time with movement shit. The speaker is piling up red light and green light cards. Hidden? Oh man, I'm having trouble putting this into words, but I'm seeing this vision of speaker taking the cards. Maybe it's like green light, red light, or maybe they're like stacking up the green light cards, and you can be like putting your wagers down and taking your wagers back, and they can be seeing how much people are betting on the stuff, and they can put down a hidden red light card. But I like this, the kind of real time but slow time. I think that kind of captures the feel of what we're going for here. Stacking up cards to progress the game. You have time to make your choices until there's a sudden stop. So maybe the speaker has numbered green light cards. So 1 to 3. So they have a value potentially on them. Draw this out for the folks at home. You can see this is 1 green, and this is a 3 green. We have our field with the different players moving down these tracks. And go by pretty quickly, but you're going to start, start at the one end, and you're going to be wagering your own green light or movement cards. So you'll have numbers on that where it might be 1 or it might be a 2. So there's a little bit of variability in exactly how far you're moving. And the player gets to like put down a card and like see everybody put down their cards, put down another card, see everyone kind of wager and put them down, and then at any point can play the red light card, flip over the stacks of cards. Anyone who's, so if the speaker has put down a 1 and a 3, and then the big old red card, anyone whose sum total is 4 or less gets to move that many spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. This person said did 3, 1, 2, 3, for example. This person did 5, and so they bust, and they don't get to move forward, or they even have to move back. Some number of green light cards, places them until they decide to red light. Players are playing movement cards. 1 through 3. And perhaps there's a potential to bank your movement. So after playing 2 or more cards, you can flip them over to move that much. That it might be canceled if the red light happens at the same time. You have to go back or something. Players trying to get a lower sum than the speaker. Otherwise they bust and can't move or have to move back. And then obviously you have some action cards in here for both the players and the speaker to spice things up, because we like the spice. Yeah, Game Biologist says, what if the speaker has a green light, red light deck? They shuffle in advance and keep flipping cards slowly and steadily as other players place their bets, and results lock in with the red light card. Yeah, I like that. Especially for a spice things up. For a lighter game, I'm automatically going to like slightly more strategic. But if you're playing something with a red, where the speaker can just be flipping over the cards, then that could be like a very simple setup game potentially, and not having to manage a hand. That could be fun for young kids. You can even have an even younger kid, without the decision of the math, be flipping those over and have a way to participate. So that sounds really cool. Senior Bob says, mulling over something where people have a red, yellow, and green cards, and each player plays one face down. They reveal in the majority of color has an effect. Ooh. I like that too as a mechanic. Some of the red light, green light games have a yellow light or different color light variations. So it sounds like there's potentially some fun stuff there as well. Rehydrate. Variation where the the speaker, the lighter, I don't know what a good term for the it person. I like the one versus many game as well. I think that's kind of a hallmark of a parlor game or a playground game. Tag, a lot of these things, one versus many. I like it. One thing that this particular idea doesn't capture is the team changing. So you had mentioned the cranes. Scroll up here a little bit. The cranes game, and then the sharks and minnows game, or the sheep and wolves game. One of the cool things about it is evolution of team composition. So it'd be cool if there's a way to switch sides, and that might be a different game, but one of the nice things about that is there's not player elimination for these style games, so it's not like anyone just has to sit out, but you're moving over on the team. So the reason for the it person to keep going is they get more people on their side, and I guess you're technically, like, you play until there's one person left and they're the winner, but you're doing the fun stuff no matter which side of the team you're on. So I think those games have a really beautiful, elegant way of playing around with consequence for failure or losing. It's not even like it's fun, right? You get tagged, now you get to tag other people. Just this another one is where you have the chain, right? You're chasing people as a chain, so you get longer to capture people. Very elegant solution to losing. All right, I was writing some more notes up here. Variation where the speaker, the lighter, flips the cards slowly, so no one knows. When the red light will come up. Pros and cons for this: with the variation of the deck, you could potentially get some weird situations where it's like red light, red light, red light. So that could get a little weird. The pro to it, though, is you don't have to manage this whole thing. It's like, did you do it? Did you flip it over just in time, or did I get it? Although, to be fair, that is the thing about these games, right? That was one of the core, fun, interesting parts about it, is like, I saw you moving, and the person's like, you didn't see me moving. So there is a potential political discussion, argument element to this. Discussion. I wonder, and I'm thinking about this with cards, as I do, or as one does. I wonder if you could do it with bits or components, too, because that would be cool. Just cards with numbers is nice. I'm thinking, too, about language-independent games. So if you could just have the color on the card and a shape. I'm thinking language independent because I know there's a company that specifically is interested in publishing these kinds of designs. But of course, I'm always thinking about colorblind and how that works with the red, green. You could have green be diamonds and play it like that. You could play around with the actual stoplight, because apparently a stoplight specifically goes in an order from red to green, like red is always on top or whatever. I don't know. I took driver's ed. This is a very long time ago. Who remembers that kind of thing? Also, I don't drive a lot nowadays. Yeah, so there could be ways to do it with just the numbers and cards, but if you could do it with wagering components. And luckily I have all these bits on my desk here that are here for very good reasons. I'm going to be wagering different things. It's like building up my stack of my stash over here. Yeah, I'm pulling out pieces, hiding my stash so no one knows how many I have left. Although that's so we're looking at this version with the tracks and movement, but now with these components and pulling things out and wagering, it could also be like a no thanks style wagering. If the lighter plays the red light, then they get all the pieces wagered. Don't have as consistent of an idea of exactly how that will work. But I really like how no thanks works. And it's the idea that you have your hidden pool and you're wagering them back and forth too. Because one thing about wagering, I think an auction wagering bidding game, it can be fun. I think it can also be very punishing. It can be a little bit stressful too, because you're putting stuff out, you're risking a lot. Like there's a high level of risk and you can't take it back, right? Once you start to see what everyone around you is doing and you realize you've made a mistake, you can't reverse that decision. So I like this idea of wagering and taking things back. Mitigated risk. It has a feeling of the old game Mule or my friend's digital board game. Why am I blanking on the name for that? Where you move, I have to remember that. Or the digital board game. So like having like pushing your luck a little bit, but coming back and forth. So you gotta like actually push your luck, like push, come back. That back and forth movement, I like. Right. Blue Onum subscribed with Twitch Plus. Yay, Sumer. Oh my gosh. Yeah. See, I'm glad Phil is here. Phil knows what I'm talking about. Sumer. I mean, that's kind of, I don't want to say that's his job, but he's a very helpful human in being able to remind me of the things that are in my brain that I know that are in there. Making me hard to keep track of them all. Very Sumer feel to it, so that's fun. Game Biologist says becoming it isn't so much losing as just changing states. I like that too. And having played, again, a lot of Magic the Gathering over the past few weeks and months, there can get to be an intensity if you're playing a lot of ortho games with very clear win and lose states. You can get into a position or feeling known as tilt if you get too engaged and personified in your experience of winning or losing. If you try to identify as a winner or loser, and still in tag, you, especially being a kid, I think it'd be a little tricky, especially if you're a younger kid or just not as fast as some of the other ones and you become it more frequently. But I think part of that magic circle of the game is pushing your luck and, you know, like going in, right? Like one of the cool, fun, like the tricky, like, oh, I'm going to go in close, their back is turned, and going in there. If you play it in such a way that you're pushing that risk, then it can be fun to really embrace the changing of the states. And it's not about the winning or the losing. It's just about experiencing all of the axes of play. I like that. Not about winning and losing. All the axes of play. Speaking of axes, coming back to this, we were looking a moment ago at this kind of racetrack with the players moving towards the finish line. But it makes me think that some sort of a wheel structure, like a circle board, could be cool. Like this. I realize exactly as I start to do this, like, little voice in my head is like, oh, and now you're gonna draw concentric circles. Watch me nail this. Yes. Pretty good. Nailed it. Oh my gosh. I need to work on my circle drawing. I think it's easier if you start from the center. Doing the big circle and working out there is a little more stressful, but that's pretty good. So if you're the same idea, but you could have this circular board moving in towards the center, and I think it has a little more visceral feel there. And then you could have a natural gameplay flow of whoever gets to the center first becomes the next it person, so that could be fun. Circular board. Whoever gets to center first, the next it person. Now I'm thinking about mocking this up. You could do it if I'm doing it on just a single piece of paper, printing wise, end up being like an 8-inch circle, which is potentially workable. Could also do it just larger and do a few sheets of paper. Especially I have the sticker paper, so I could put on a big folding board. From the games that I've taken apart, I actually have some big circle boards, so that could be a cool place. A cool way to do that. I wonder how big, maybe like 12 or 16 inches? Yeah, sure. Let's do a 16-inch square. I think we could go ahead and start to mock this up a little bit if I switch over my view. Grandstanding. If pieces got passed back and forth based on win-loss conditions, it could be super interesting, right? Like that's, it feels like it's potentially going in a couple of different directions, and not necessarily hewing to the original vision of red light, green light. I like the readability of red light, green light, and for anyone who's played, it could be a very natural experience, but mixing it up a little bit and having, again, that tension from interaction. You know, if you're just flipping over the cards, might have a limited lifespan for how fun it is, so it could still be a good family or child experience because they'll do those things over and over again, right? But having a little bit of back and forth and exchange could be very fun as well. Also, we need a name. We always got to name these things, right? Put red light, green light for a temporary name, but we need something preferably punny, riffing off of that, so I can name the game and name the stream as well. Alright, where are we here with Photoshop? No. Design. Yeah, let's just throw in display capture. Window capture. Oh my gosh, why is it? That's weird. Haha! That does not appear to be Photoshop. That's mad. Do a new window capture. And Photoshop. There we go. I love OBS. It's like very functional, but I feel half the time I feel like I'm just throwing stuff around, and like I get it working just the way I want it to, and then like I'm in here and it's like the Wild West. Like my window or my view doesn't work, so I'm just like, we're doing it live, throwing the stuff in there. So we got our square, our 16-inch square. Ooh. Wooden tokens and bags. Give everyone a non-losable piece that represents their starting position of each part. Stop, go. Ooh, yeah. Stop, go. You got some good stuff here, Brandstanding. I like this. With the bag builder and pieces that you can trade but not losing everything. I'm gonna mock up a board. Again, it might not be a board movement sort of a thing. Or maybe the pieces translate into movement. I think having some movement in here gives it a nice, fun feel. Alright. Let us get our guides in there. Start doing our circles. We got a snap. We got our snap going. How do we want our circles? Oh, I want to go from the center. Yeah, I got my alt in. Let's do like 1/2 inch. Yeah. Hit that up with a stroke. Stroke 4 pixels. Sweet. Shift Control N. Gotta work on my hotkeys. It's probably one of my key learnings for getting better at streaming and making this a more viewable experience for you all. Hopefully you're not hating too much on my slow Photoshop abilities, but you can see starting to evolve here with some fancy concentric circles. Circling it up. How many degrees or steps are we gonna want? 1, 2, 3, probably like 10 or so. Yeah. I think for our size that we're going for now, we could get about 10 in there. Stroke. I need some fancy circle, repetitive motion circle, encircling music here. Do 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 do. What kind of music, what kind of sounds do circles make? I feel like that's a philosophical question. Stroke. Or like repeat last stroke would be a good hotkey to have. So if you're just joining us for the stream right now, we're making concentric circles. Yes, we have gone back to kindergarten. If that was your question, you're entirely correct in your assessment. Alright, do my circles, and then I'll get my tracks in here. I wonder what a good player count for this would be. Imagine that you could have quite a few people playing this at the same time. 6 or 8? You could at least do 8 segments to our concentric circles here. That would be elegant. That would be a pretty board. I like this too because I was actually just looking at my Haba kit here. In case you missed the episode where we were talking about the Haba kit, Haba does, as far as I'm aware, they've done it every year for the last couple of years. And they do a design competition where they'll ship out a kit with all sorts of bits. I talked to them on Twitter, and apparently they literally just have this huge box of components and they dig into it with a huge scoop and put those in boxes and mail those out to people. First of all, that sounds like kind of the best job ever. And just working there and having access to that huge bit box, it's like literally my dream scenario. So they mail a limited number of these kits out to people, and they have a design competition where you build something based on those kits. And it's been in the back of my mind. I haven't been thinking too seriously about it, but I think this kind of thing might fit in that Haba-esque realm, depending on how all these bits end up coming together. Stroke it up. All right, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, in there. Do a couple more circles. Pop back into the chat. This is so meditative too. It's one of the things I like about some of this prototyping work is that you can actually just do it. Take some deep breaths, do the repetitive action, design and commune with your inner thoughts, inner self. Like it. Just think about your life philosophy. I swear, the more I do this, the more I feel like the Bob Ross of board game design. Not that I would... Not that I think that I'm quite on Bob Ross's level. I think that's something to aspire to. It's probably a better way to put it. I'd like to aspire to being the Bob Ross of board game design. So we're going to do some happy little circles here. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just going to do it up. Do a circle. Oh yeah, look at those circles. Look at those concentric circles. Isn't that beautiful? You can do your circles anyway. The idea is just to get them in there. Get in there with the circles. Game Biologist says, hey, circular reasoning is a really fun family game that's just about moving through concentric circles to get to the center. Alright. Okay. I have to say, I really enjoy doing this with y'all, and one of my favorite things is just hearing about all of these different games that I've never heard about before. And Game Biologist, you're really rocking it today with all of these suggestions. I mean, it must have been like 5 or 6 things that I've not heard of that I'm very interested and excited about. This kind of a pitch, it's a game about moving through concentric circles, and it's a family game, and that's the game. I'm already like, I want a circular reasoning game. I'm like, I want to play this now. Oh my gosh, it looks so cool too. So how do you actually move through the circles? Abstract strategy game. Consists of a center goal. Each player gets a square, a triangle, and a circle, which move 3, 4, or 2 spaces. So you race toward the center and block other tokens. Cool. That is definitely... I think for when you're designing games, it very much helps to have games in mind that do similar things. And you can kind of pull from those and see what they're doing. So I like that. There's some cool stuff going on there. All right. So if you're just joining us, this is our circles. We're making a game board. It might not look like it, but this is a board made for games. Yes. Oh yeah. So I can just stroke that. Yeah. Stroke this, duplicate the layer, rotate, transform, rotate it 90 degrees. Let's hide our guide for a second. Okay, that was just looking a little lighter for some reason, and probably print okay. Duplicate again, rotate it. I'm like, can I do this just, what's the easiest way to do this? Can I do it just like 45 degrees? Oh my gosh, it worked. So I do Photoshop a lot, but I use it for like a lot of different things. And I'm still learning. That's one of the cool things. Oh no! Wait, where'd it go? Ah. Did it... Oh, that's so sad. Did we like lose it in the rotate, free rotate? I think we can just do, yeah, just hold that down and that should be in the right place. Shoot, I don't know why it's disappearing though. That's so sad. I'll have to play around with that. It must have gotten too skinny or something. Here, let me do this one. Duplicate that. It's like we're learning so much about Photoshop here. Also, we made our line disappear and now we're sad. Okay. I'm like, have I somehow managed to connect these things to each other? I've put my circle layer into my line layer and now I cannot rotate. And now we shall not rotate. Alright, I'll play around with that a little bit and figure out the rotation because yeah, because that is being sad. It's like, why are you not rotating? Yeah, well, we'll have to figure that out to get our lines in the board. So yeah, there we're gonna have... It's an interesting... Do you even really need quadrants, though? I don't know. Because if you don't... That's an interesting... You see, and this is where physical prototyping, actually building out your prototype, can inform your mechanical decisions. Because the quadrants, or I guess they're not going to be quadrants, they're going to be octants. Octants, right? Is that a word? Because the quadrants presumes that you're going to have your pieces segregated into separate sections, that they're not going to interact. But what if there's a way that you could interact with people on the same level and not having a distinction or quadrant there? You can also just have more, like you could have 20 or 30 people in here, right? You could just like, as long as you had the different player pieces moving down the spaces, you're not limited by numbers. So that's kind of cool. Unless they each have a deck of cards. Man, I feel like you could do something interesting with like a very high player count. Then of course, I mean, if you're doing a physical game like this though, you have like 20 people gathered around the board. That could be a little hectic. Oh, try Googling folk games. That's another Another game for the playground games. Thank you, Senior Bob. That's another good term. I don't think that even comes up on the Wikipedia list that I was looking at. But yeah, folk games, parlor games, playground games, outdoor games. There's a couple of other terms for these games that are no components or light components, very rules light, usually done in a physical space, usually dexterity and highly interactive. Mother says, I don't know how it plays yet, but I picked up a copy of Centrix at Breakout Con this year. It's another move across concentric circles game. Try saying that 10 times fast. Concentric circles. There's all sorts of concentric circles games. Circular hedge maze. I like that too. And this is the thing too. It started out as a red light, green light game. It doesn't necessarily have to end there. From this evolution, this idea of playing cards, you could have like a maze-like element to it, and if you did have the quadrants or octants, see if this is showing up okay. You could have some blockers, right? Maybe there's a navigation element where certain ones you couldn't move directly forwards. You had to come in, draw some like movement arrows, navigate into other regions to make the board last a little longer, right? You're not just going straight into the center. There could be hedges or blockers. That force you to move around the board, and maybe you interact with other players depending on your location. So now I'm thinking like the red light, green light, but the speaker is a giant statue in the middle of this hedge maze, and you're kind of navigating, and it's pointing its gaze down towards you and impeding you with the red light. That's weird, but sure, we're gonna go with it. Giant statue at the center of the hedge maze, impeding you with the red light. This is cool too, because we're thinking more circular and you can be directional about it. So perhaps the speaker has a direction. Let's get another, we can just do it like this. So you have your piece here in the center, and say it's like a pawn, for example. It has an arrow on it. So you're still doing the red light, green light thing, but maybe you are like a couple of arrows. Maybe what you're saying only impacts the people in your direction, and the other people can keep stacking things up, but you can play a card to rotate. Getting a little more complex here, but some fun, interesting ideas to play around with. As a direction, or two directions. Still real time, but the speaker has to take an action to rotate, and only affects a few of the players at a time. And part of it, like I like it's not exactly one versus many, it's still kind of like many versus many. So you're doing the one versus many, but you might be able to affect other players as well, because you're trying to race towards the center, push them into the line of sight of the speaker, for example. Yes, often is a word. Thank you, Senior Bob, helping me with the language learning skills. I like learning new words. You just need a way to indicate players. There are pawns in the circles. Maybe if you move along a path and encounter another pawn, hop it to an adjacent ring. I like that. Push them like, or hop other pieces. Centrically, or around the circle. I'm not sure what the term for that is. Around the circle only, or even towards the center. Towards the center could get a little weird because you'd be kind of crazy leapfrogging it. But I guess you wouldn't be able to jump over hedges that way, so it might still be okay. As players get to the middle space, it becomes tighter. It could be that you have to move into open space. Red eyes, green leaves. Giant statue with the gem eyes and the green leaves of the hedge. Ooh, like that. It's clever grandstanding. Wow, we've gotten like way off from where we started with this, which I really like. Red eyes, green leaves. I think it's a little less on the nose, potentially a little more difficult to describe than red light, green light. But then again, I might be having too much attachment and nostalgia to the red light, green light concept in general. Yeah, so we started from this concept of focus. Man, this is so cool. Look at this. This is one of the reasons why I love this brainstorming technique, and I love co-designing with people in the chat, because this was not what I expected going into it. We're just talking about focus games, went off of the track of the playground, parlor, folk games, started naming games, came on red light, green light, we talked about our nostalgia for all these games and all of our shared experiences playing them, and then came up with a lot of really cool potential ideas for an actual tabletop physical game that could embody some of these shared experiences, and maybe an idea for a book too. I can't imagine, there must be, I swear, growing up, I would always be attracted to these kind of books. There was like 50 parlor games. So there must be books like that out there. But having like a cool like rules book of rules with history and maybe some like cool pictures or something could be really cool. I want to write a book. I've got a lot of ideas for books, and that could be a cool one. Anyways, off topic, started with folk games and parlor games, came up with an idea for a board game, came up with a lot of ideas for it, and this idea is evolving over time. I had a great chat with John Gilmore of Panasaurus Games during Origins, and he said when he's working on ideas with a team, he would make a brainstorm, write down the first 10 ideas that they came up with, and just throw those away. Like the first ideas that come to mind, not that they're bad, and not that you can't come up with a lot of really cool stuff like that, but they tend to be, they feel organic, and you can feel a very strong connection to these first ideas you come up with, but that's because they're coming from a place of the known. They're coming from a place of shared experience. They're coming from a place of nostalgia or history. And hence they can be a little more accessible, but they can also be the kinds of things that most people or any person could come up with. And again, not putting any judgment values on that, but speaking through this, letting ideas evolve over time, I think often you can come up with juicier things and things that are a little bit outside of the ordinary, I like to get a balance of both, right? A balance of the known and the unknown. And if you are interested in pitching or selling games in today's market, having that balance of the known and unknown is really where a lot of publishers want the games that they're picking up to be. I heard this over and over from people. It's like, we want something new. We want something different. But if you show them something too different that's like totally not in their wheelhouse, they're like, yeah, I see you got the different part, but it doesn't have enough. It's too weird, right? So I think by taking this technique of starting with your core ideas and then pushing out the boundaries a little bit, you can have the familiar and then the new as well, which is a good place for game design to be. Senior Bob says, what did they play before there was such a thing as stoplights? For red light, green light? This is a good question. Hey Google, when were stoplights invented?
1868. On the website theguardian.com, they say, the first traffic signal was invented by J.P. Knight, a railway signaling engineer. It was installed outside the Houses of Parliament in 1868 and looked like any railway signal of the time, with waving semaphore arms and red-green lamps, operated by gas, for night use. To find out more...
Wow, there you go. I don't know if you could hear that or not, but yeah. Stoplights were invented in 1868. I'm going to just add that to my notes because that's a cool little tidbit. 1868. When were cars invented? I'm not going to ask Google about that because I think it was like 1900s or something. So stoplights predate the cars. I guess it mentions something about rails. So it would be for horse traffic maybe, or for rail traffic. So stoplights were around earlier than you think. But it does make you wonder if they had a sort of like stop-go game. And again, if we had a history of parlor games, then we might know this information or have a place to look it up. Red light, green light game. Maybe if I look this up on Wikipedia. Statues game. Ooh, okay. So here we have a nice little history. Again, we're digging deep with this, but I love this history and I love learning more about this stuff. So Statues, also known as red light, green light in the United States, and Grandmother's Footsteps in the United Kingdom, is a popular children's game, often played in different countries. So they did have this game before the lights. Do they have a history? It has a lot of different names. They don't have a date for it, so I don't know. I'd have to look up more deeply to see if I could find origination. But for the freezing and the statues, that could have gone back centuries, right? Millennia. Like that kind of sort of a game could have been around since the dawn of games. So that's just really super cool to think about. Red light, green light used to be statues. So there you go. There's your answer for that. That sounds like what movie writers should do. Game Bowser says, Steven Johnson does a good discussion about the adjacent possible in his books. It's all about the innovation that has one foot in the familiar and one foot in the new. I might have to add those books. If you have a title, feel free to share it, because I'm always looking for more books about creativity, innovation, ideas. Although what I do with these books is I go on Amazon and download the sample, never read it. So I need to work on catching up some of my readings. I have a great list. And I think a lot of this stuff is really helpful if you want to delve into the philosophy of design. I think it can help to make you a better designer. I think when we first get started out with design, you just get so excited about making anything. And I think that's awesome and a great place to be. And I kind of miss that a little bit because I found as I progress through game design, there's a little more weight on it, a little more pressure to make something that a publisher would want or to make something different than all the games that I've played. But it can also be a fun, exciting space, right? Because you're like, how can I push the boundaries? And as a game designer, it's definitely somewhere that I'm interested to be. Senior Bob says, I think I'm going to adopt the phrase reinvent the stoplight instead of reinvent the wheel. You should do that. I want that to become a thing. One of my goals in life is to invent a word that ends up in the dictionary, but I think inventing a phrase that ends up in common vernacular is also a great goal. Senior Bob, trains might have had stop-go indicators. Yeah, especially where they have the tracks lining up and the intersections. I imagine that's probably where that was invented. Anyways, a lot of good stuff in our design chat today. As always, I'm really excited about this concept. I think I need like my own personal design retreat or something because I have a lot of stuff going on here with the Ludology. If you haven't checked that out, you should check it out. We had most recent episode was interviewing Jerome from Splotter Games. That was a really fun episode. Got the table takes going on, the streams, lots of different projects. But talking to you is like, I should do that. I should hunker down and get a bunch of these prototypes into physical form because honestly, the stuff that we come up here in chat is is as good or better than the stuff that I come up with myself. And I have a lot of these ideas floating around, but when we get to do the prototypes like this, we're already 50-60% of the way there for a prototype. Like, this is a game I could hack on for probably an hour or two and have a prototype ready to go. So maybe I should do that. Maybe. And then get my physical prototyping stream up because we haven't done that in a while. We had an issue with the audio last time, but I think I could make it work this time. You can actually see me. It's going to be a more meditative thing of just like stickering, cutting the cards, laying out the pieces, cutting the boards. Could be fun. Anyways, I think that's about it for today's stream. It's been super fun. One last comment from Game Biologist. I had a friend recommend Where Good Ideas Come From by Steven Johnson. I wasn't digging his writing style. I've enjoyed Predictably Irrational by Daniel Ariely Moore. It's about irrational psychology, but it's catnip if you're interested in how people make their weird choices in games. I am interested in how people make their weird choices. In fact, that's like, as a person who likes to make weird choices and think about choices and why I do things and why people do things, that is very much in my wheelhouse. Like we have here, wheelhouse. Maybe that could be a name too, the wheelhouse. Yeah, lots of great information, lots of great resources today, great ideas. As always, if anything here inspires you or makes you think of your own designs, feel free to move forward with this. No one owns these things, these ideas. I think some of the exciting innovations happen when people are working on similar things and pushing each other and challenging each other. And once you make a prototype and start testing it, as long as you listen to yourself as a designer and the feedback that you're getting from playtesters, it's going to be a different game. If we both, me and you, chat, if we all started with this game concept and started jamming on it, we'd come up with 10, 20 different games. So always happy to release these ideas into the wild, to offer inspiration. Always encourage people to use these brainstorm techniques to come up with their own ideas, and always excited to talk about design, either here on chat or on Twitter. So yeah, that'll be it for today. Hope you have a good rest of your Tuesday. Tune in here every Tuesday at 4 p.m. PST to join the design stream. I have another show on Fridays as well at 6 p.m. PST, where we play some casual Magic. Looking to add some more shows as well as I ramp up on the streaming, because I'm having a lot of fun doing it. You can also follow the channel if you want to be alerted for when we go live, and now that I'm an affiliate, you can subscribe as well. So you can use your Twitch Prime free subscription. So if you have Twitch Prime, or Amazon Prime, if you have Amazon Prime, you should have a free subscription to Twitch, which is pretty cool. It's like free money you can give to me or all the other lovely streamers that you watch. As always, it's a pleasure spending my Tuesdays with you, and I will see you again next Friday or next week. Catch you all soon. Bye.